Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Vegan Spirituality online gathering. This is our opportunity to explore veganism as a spiritual practice. My name's Lisa Levinson. I'm Campaigns Director for In Defense of Animals and the founder of Vegan Spirituality and co-founder of the Interfaith Vegan Coalition. And it's our honor to present a special guest to you today who's been very busy saving animals and also having legal victories. So we've got lots to share with you. We're very excited. If you are curious about vegan spirituality, you can join us during these online programs, or we also have local groups that meet in Los Angeles, Philadelphia, New York, and other places. You can find a little bit more about that going to veganspirituality.com. And we also have a Facebook page, which is Vegan Spirituality Community on Facebook. So we hope you can join us. And meanwhile, I would love to introduce you to my co-host, Judy Carmen, who is the author of Peace to All Beings and Homo Ahimsa. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Lisa. Hi, everybody. It's so wonderful to be here, and we're so grateful to our wonderful guest, Altamush Saeed, for joining us at 5 in the morning in Pakistan. So we're just extremely grateful for that. That's a lot to get up that early, and we really appreciate it. So everyone, you're just going to be blown away, as I was, by all that Altamush has done. And I don't know how he has accomplished all this, but he has. He is a Pakistani interspecies justice lawyer, an activist, a philanthropist, a teacher, and a filmmaker. He holds 4 advanced law degrees, including an animal law, which is just huge to have someone in animal law. So we're so excited about that. He's the first Pakistani recipient of the Brooks Institute for Animal Rights and Policy International Scholarship. He also holds a human rights LLM from the University of Michigan Law School, where he was the Comparative and International Law Scholar and winner of the Myint Zan LLM Prize, an outstanding LLM student for Pro-Bono Service, and also a BA from Lahore University of Management Services. In 23, he completed an environmental law, so animal and environment, as an environmental law ambassador scholarship recipient at Lewis and Clark Law School. He is an animal, environmental, and animals in disasters law lecturer at the University of Central Punjab Law School in Lahore and the Nust Law School in Islamabad, where he teaches Pakistan's first animal law advocacy and international animal and environmental law and animal disaster law courses. He has educated faith-based leaders in Islam on interspecies justice and is working on more grassroots education projects for judges and students across Pakistan. So, and that's not all. So amazing. He is known for his nonprofit work also in interspecies justice, earning him the 2022 Alumni Achievement Award and the 2023 Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Trailblazer in Animal Welfare. So he is also the founder and lead of Pakistan's first international animal and environmental rights conference and director for Pakistan's first animal law advocacy film series. He's also an international law expert for Pakistan at World Animal Justice and a co-founder of Charity Doings, which is very significant to us at In Defense or at In Defense of Animals, but also Interfaith Vegan Coalition, because Charity Doings is one of our members of the Interfaith Vegan Coalition. He is the co-founder of Charity Doings, and we'll hear more about what that is, what that does. And he's Pakistan's first dedicated animal and environmental law and policy firm. I didn't read that right. He's a co-founder of that. He is the founder and chair of Pakistan's first notified animal law committee at the Lahore High Court Bar Association of Pakistan. So the animals have a huge, powerful friend in Pakistan and worldwide, I would say. So, Altamush, I'm in awe of you and all that you do. And I just maybe we could start out by asking you to tell us about your journey. How did you get here to doing all these amazing things? How long have you been vegan? How long have you been interested in animal rights? How did it all start? And how did you get where you are?
Firstly, thank you so much. I apologize, for the long bio. Should have said a smaller one, so it would have been easier. But it's been a journey. It's not complete yet, actually. I'm still learning a lot of stuff on the go. Because just last night there was an incident with some animal and somebody reached out, for animal legal aid. And so we supported them and helped them and made sure that, we saved their animals, which included 26 dogs, which, I mean, 22 of them are safe now. We're working on the last four. But it's a journey because, there's problems, and I think problems give you perspective in finding solutions. And many of the problems are very, very novel. But you have to get in there and hopefully fix it for the animals. And for me, the animals, are equally important as the environment and human beings. So I've always seen them together, but that is something that happened very, very recently. This has been, I would say, more than a 9 years journey when it came to developing this nonprofit and everything else. But even before that, when I was just like, very young, like 14, 15 years old, I always had this thing, to do good. But of course, in a country like Pakistan, I have to give perspective that it's really hard to see animals. And the reason for that is just human suffering on its own is extremely bad here. So for people to see beyond themselves is in itself, a path to liberation, but not everybody gets to do that, which also means that it's a big responsibility. So
Yeah.
I came into animal rights work because of my cat. I give her full credit. Her name is Mao, and she's actually sitting on the bed, but she's a bit far. Otherwise, I would have introduced all of you to her. So she has taught me in ways that I cannot explain. And I know people here, they're very close to animals, so they will understand that animals just have a way of, teaching you stuff without saying it. But I think that's the true definition of love as well, right? You don't need words to explain it. It's just there. So my cat Mao came into my life in 2018, and this is kind of how I started out. I had no idea, what spay neuter at that point meant because it was too new for me. So my cat went out and, came back pregnant. She gave birth to six wonderful babies, which are all at home with us. That was 6 years ago, 7 years now. And, those animals have changed my life and taught me stuff. So, I mean, that was how I originally started out. But before that, in 2018, I was already doing human rights work, as I mentioned before, because that's kind of, what the people here see. It's not people's fault, but you still have to educate them that empathy and, this new idea that I'm working on called the poverty of empathy, which I think is the real problem in society, starts with, not feeling for humans, and then eventually it never flows on to the environment and animals. So it's been a journey. Originally, human rights work for, 6 years, I would say, uh, before 2018, working directly only for them. Eventually, with my cat, I saw that, I'm missing something. So as a student at that point, I did what everybody did, join protests, because that's how you learn more about animals. And I'll be very honest that, we still live in a very anthropocentric world. It's humanistic. And so the animals that we normally interact with are animals that are close to human beings and not those, that we should actually talk about because it's a journey. So eventually it started with mostly companion animal issues because that's a huge issue in my country, which is known as dog culling, where the government comes in and poisons and shoots the dogs, which I know happens in many other countries. But if you technically read about the history of animal law movements, it always starts with animals that are close to human beings, and eventually it flows on to other animals. So you have to cross those barriers to make sure that the movement moves on. And of course, you have to work for farm animals and other animals on the way. So the animals came in since 2018, and eventually, when COVID happened, that's when the environment fully came in, and eventually with the floods, which happened in Pakistan in 2022, which I hope people know about. But at one point, one third of my country was actually underwater. Over 1 million farm animals died in that process, and over 1,700 human beings died, and over 12,000 were injured. There was a huge economic loss, and we still haven't recovered from it. Reports have started to come out, which basically say that Pakistan was the most climate change affected country in 2022. And that is something, is changing the trajectory of the entire country towards moving towards green and adding in everything we do. So while we still haven't discussed a food policy that's green, which I am working on personally, a petition that would eventually create the first ever environmental friendly food system policy for my country, which I'm very, very hopeful will pass because it's in their interest and it's in the interest of everybody and the animals, of course. But you have to be strategic. I'm working in a country where animal rights is really hard to argue. So you have to be, strategic, the arguments you use, the animals you talk about, and the benefits you talk about as well as it happens to animals. So it's still ongoing, and I think I'm not sure what I will learn next. But in the process, if when you introduce my bio, you must have noticed that one of the LLMs was human rights, international law, one was animal law, and the last was environmental law. This didn't happen on its own. I had no plans, but it did happen. And I generally believe that, I was always meant to work on the intersection because interspecies justice is imagining a better world for all life, humans, animals, and the environment. And that is actually the theory of change of my own life and not just my nonprofit and my law firm that I recently started 2 years ago. So, this animal law firm and environmental law firm where we have probably the worst financial model in the world. We offer free animal legal aid as much as possible because for me the animals kind of come really really first actually. So everybody's reaching out. I mean, yesterday I think I got over 20 to 30 calls from separate people asking for help, and I always am available. Find a way because the animals need saving, because if I don't, then somebody else would probably not get that resource away. So things are moving. People are getting to know me in Pakistan, which is the other side of the things, because I'm not sure but I'm a very shy person. I don't like to go into the media and stuff, but I'm trying to change it because people need me as a resource. I've come to realize that. And eventually, we're building this movement perspective, which is something that we did at the conference as well, which was something, I dreamed of last year. Raised the funding and everything, and got so many partners from across the world, including your organization as well. That, eventually, when the conference concluded, I still couldn't believe what I had, become a part of. It was something that was picked up by every single media channel in my country. The judges know about it. I would say the prime minister knows as well, and a lot of other good people. So it's moving the needle in the right direction, and everybody knows, if it's animal rights work, they have to, they know the person to reach out, which is getting better. And people are actually talking about it, thinking about it, because in my last few weeks, I have been meeting actually sitting judges of my Supreme Court of my country, which is like the apex, like the highest court. And I've had some conversations, and eventually I start with environmental law work because that's what they're interested in. But almost always they are the ones who bring animal law to the top and say you should work on that, and develop it and everything. And so it's just been beautiful. The conference was fully plant-based. I got a lot of slack for that, but I'm proud of it that we pulled it off. And we are working on, more plant-based things. My nonprofit organization, Charity Doings Foundation, finally went vegan last year. It took a lot of effort. The members aren't vegan. I'm the only vegan there, but still they understand. And then, they're also able to connect it with the environmental footprint because we work in the most climate affected country in the world, uh, as pleased per the reports, and it would just not make any sense to further aggravate that problem. So that's the argument I normally use. And normally when I'm, advocating for veganism, what I normally do is, and I think it's easy to make this subject completely non-controversial. So I always say to them, if you're talking about animals, let's not eat them. That's it. I don't talk to them that, it's ethical or unethical, because that's an argument that will take a lot of time to develop. So you just have to work with it and make it as non-controversial as possible, which is something I've learned as a lawyer as well. And this law firm is, progressing and growing at a very, very fast pace. As I mentioned, people are reaching out, and I'm, always kind of there. And whenever there's a problem, which is, unfortunate, but it's moving in the right direction. And just in the last few months, I would say we filed over 12 lawsuits. We got interim relief in all of them. They were all animal rights cases, and some of them are very landmark cases. We got two judgments as well. And now, hopefully, in 2 weeks' time, I will file that food system policy case as well. And I'm working and hoping that, we can advance that precedent from one province to another. Because because just like the US, and this is something the audience will understand, every state had its own policy around animal welfare, right? So you have to start with one province and eventually it flows on. So that's kind of the strategy we're doing. But right now I've successfully expanded into two provinces. I'm, just one person. So I'm building my team. And of course, finances are limited, but we are getting traction. So things are moving in the right direction where I can hire people and educate them and move the things forward. Because, I mean, through Charity Doings Foundation, while we do things on the ground that support veganism in every way possible, we still need to work on the legal and the policy side of things. And eventually you need to move on to other creative, solutions as well. So one of my very recent projects is the imam training projects that you mentioned in my bio as well. Firstly, I never thought it would be possible because convincing imams, faith-based leaders, who are basically, for those who don't know, lead mosques in the Islamic culture. They're responsible for the culture, the curriculum, the prayers, everything that happens inside a mosque, and convincing them to even sit and listen about animal, human, and environmental rights is really hard to sell. But where there's a goodwill, I think there's divine way as well, which is something that's been happening to me a lot. So we convinced these 25 faith-based leaders to come together and we trained them on these topics, and it was just literally so beautiful. I wish more people were there. And now we're expanding that same project into two other cities and eventually other places as well. Because, while we are having this webinar with people who have access to the internet, there are many people who don't know what internet is, probably. So you have to, work on education at every level. So imams is the most grassroots level. Then, of course, we're working on education for school children. We are working on a project to train judges as well because they're the ones who write the jurisprudence. And we have to believe that they're human and they don't know these things. And if they know, it's not possible for them to put it out into paper that's binding on everybody. And then, of course, as an university lecturer, professor, I'm always about advocating these interspecies justice points, and of course, about colonialism and imperialism as well, because it's the same thing happens to humans, and we do the same thing to animals, and people need to understand and make that connection really, really easily. So things are moving. I am proud of it, but of course, they're very, very slow, and movements take time, and you sometimes have to understand that it's not you, it's the movement. And I'm fully convinced that it's not me, it's the movement that's more important. And I'm trying to build something where I'm no longer needed. It's gonna take time. I'm 29 years old right now, but I'm hoping I'll, achieve it in a few years because the animals don't have the time, and I honestly want to do more. So that's the plan. I hope that makes sense.
Oh my goodness. That is so much that you're doing, and it's so revolutionary, it sounds like, for your country. And I don't know that I realized how much human suffering there is there that makes it hard to think about animals. And well, along with the flood that you mentioned, that only makes it worse when people are just trying to survive. And did you use the term poverty of empathy? Did,
Yes.
I thought so. I think that's really a profound term. And do you think it has to do partly with um, being in survival mode, not being able to empathize because you have to take care of yourself?
Yeah, so poverty of empathy is something that just, came to me actually just a few months ago. And so the idea is to basically create a curriculum just around these two words, and eventually help people understand, because I personally feel it's not money, it's not something else, just the ability to feel empathy, and then the inability to convert it into compassion. Because empathy itself is, not the end goal. It's taking action based on it. But that's the first starting block. And I think it happens in everything we do. Uh, because if we talk about human history, talking about colonialism, imperialism is really, really important in understanding the working class who suffers, because of these things, and eventually animals as well, is important in that perspective. Then I think the environment and animals are equally colonized by us. They suffer every day, and those kind of arguments are important. So the food system is fully colonized, and animals are both labor, humans are labor. The environment is, I don't know what, it's just, insane. And then of course, if we talk about other perspectives, for example, in cases of disasters, or in cases of how we generally live life, we are unable to even acknowledge the fact that we're not living alone. We have animals and the environment, and we have other human beings as well. Because I think if we can empathize with human beings, we can empathize with animals, and I believe the vice versa is also possible. So I recently found this imam, a faith-based leader, who is so convinced in my work. He's like, if you advocate for animal rights, maybe people will understand human rights as well. So it's we're reversing the system. And this curriculum, which I'm hoping will be ready in a few weeks, is something I'm going to launch in my country, because I think without love we cannot do this. We cannot sustain any of this, and it will have Islam as well, because that's an argument that we have to advocate in Pakistan as a Muslim country, and I think other nations as well, because there's a lack of jurisprudence on this religion for some reason, which we're developing. So, a part of my bio, which I did not mention, was I also work with this beautiful organization called Green Islam. And as a member, we are all Muslim vegans, which are also part of your coalition. We're working on this very revolutionary book on veganism and animal rights in Islam. It's the first one in the world. So, we are in the final stages of a contract, which I'm hopeful we'll get, because I don't see any other way. And I think that will, create at least some space for people to read about it. So in a few years, 2 years at the max, please wait for it. But yeah, I think at the bottom it's always poverty of empathy that's causing all these problems. And we need to think about it. How we see ourselves, how we see others, how we see the environment, and eventually how we see the animals as well. And true empathy, I think, is seeing them together, not in separate boxes, which is another problem, because that's how our education system works. If we think about it, since day one we enter, it's almost, completely human centric. Even the environment is ignored, and so we can understand the animals have no place there. So curriculum wise, there are not a lot of schools in the world, I would say, that specifically teach about these things. So it's just been a part of us since we were born. And that's a lot of changes that we need to make. So small process, but big thoughts, of course.
Yeah, there are a lot of changes, yes. From birth practically, we get programmed with this anthropocentric view of the world. I wanted to mention the video that you did called Navigating Veganism with Islamic Principles. And that's the title of it, in quotes there, for anybody that wants to look it up.
I'm actually from Pakistan. I'm an animal rights lawyer. I run a nonprofit by the name of Charity Doings Foundation, which works all over Pakistan. In 2018, I was lucky that a cat actually came into my home. I say that she rescued me because that's when I learned about animal welfare and the true love for animals. So religion is actually a major part of Pakistan. 97% of population, they're all Muslims. On the legal end, Islam is actually part of our constitution as well. So we are a legally Islamic country. Islam is a huge, major part of our identity. So it goes along with everything that we do. To advocate for veganism, you actually need to advocate for animal stewardship. So there's a lot of reference in Quran about animal welfare. Animals are actually mentioned as their communities like humans. Community is translated to the word ummah, which means people for whom the religion is made. So basically what I'm trying to say is that Islam is equally for the animals as it is for humans. In Islam, killing is an act of iniquity. It's not something that's appreciated and God doesn't like it. Halal is not just the idea of the slaughter itself, it's the idea that the animal must not suffer any pain. It is done in the name of God and you have to take permission. At the point of slaughter, we are using all that land, all that water. We are disrupting our trust that we have in nature. Slaughter is not mandatory. There's no requirement. It's only when you need food. So my argument is that even though that was true for 1400 years ago, now we have all these alternatives available. So the need argument is no longer true. And at the same time, veganism is not prohibited. And if you apply the spirit of the religion, you can actively advocate for veganism in the religion. I'm the co-director for Charity Doings Foundation Pakistan. Our mission statement is to advocate for the teachings of the life of the Prophet. And the Prophet advocated for rights for all beings, which is human, animals, and the environment. If humans have the same needs, animals have the same needs. And that's the ideology that's part of our nonprofit work. We installed water projects in Pakistan for both humans and animals. So it's environmentally sustainable, it's human welfare, and it's animal welfare at the same time. I would say like millions of animals in Pakistan drink from that water project monthly or yearly alongside humans. And the special thing about this project is that we don't tell the people what we're actually doing because we want them to internalize the idea. When humans see that their children and the animals are drinking from the same water project, that feeling that comes in is that mother's love. It's that thing that's in nature with everybody and things just align. I don't see a difference between human, animals, and the environment because suffering is suffering. And our mutual goal, even beyond the movement of movements, is ending all suffering. We only have one life to make a difference, do it today. They only have one life to make a difference, do it today. That's life.
Well, that is so inspiring. I really thank you, Lisa, for getting that on there. I just thought it was really, really precious and beautiful. So, so you did address in the film how Islamic principles support animal rights and veganism. There's a lot, evidently, and I know Ramadan is happening now, and are there a lot of Muslim vegans who might be celebrating it in a vegan way, or what's going on with that?
So, I mean, that answer, of course, I hope you understand, is just, still connecting the word veganism with Islam is a new conversation. So it's gonna take some time, but because whenever one of the barriers, I would not say barrier, but when Muslims especially want to go vegan, they're always looking for resources as to, is this even allowed in my religion? Because that's the first question that pops into their head, because they've never been taught to see Islam this way. They've not been taught to go beyond the human, because when we often read about it, we often read Islam as highly anthropocentric because it places human on the pedestal and gives everything to him, and everything has been made subject to his dominion and everything else. That is, of course, one plausible argument that exists, and there are resources that support that. But everything else is, for some reason, not taught or not discussed at all, which is where the animals and the environment come in. So in Islam, there is no requirement for you to eat animal products. There is none, not at all. So the possibility of veganism is right there, it's open. And secondly, if we go beyond human, that's when you make the connection with the environment and animals. So while the religion talks about a specific way of animal slaughter, which I think is allowed in certain circumstances. Factory farming is completely prohibited in Islam. Completely, like 100%. There is no second opinion on this. But of course, we cherry pick those parts of the religion that we like, and then we diminish conversation about this topic so people never get it. So there's been very few books on these topics. I would say less than 10 in the world, who talk about these things. So there's definitely a need for more discourse, and there's nothing, absolutely nothing, that's on veganism, animal rights, and Islam, which is why we decided that we need to push this work out. And that was also a divine help on its own as well, because I don't think I'm capable of thinking all these things that I've been doing, and I don't know what comes next. So it's just a very easy argument to make if you think about it. And the environmental argument actually is the strongest. As I mentioned in the video, the harm that the environment is suffering as a process of factory farming is insane. And in Islam, the model is basically a trusteeship model. So this anthropocentric notion is actually completely wrong. The thing is, we are not the owners of anything as Muslims. God has ownership. And we have basically this trusteeship where the beneficiaries, the true beneficiaries of the world, which is animals and the environment and people around us, need to benefit from it. And the harm that we create and the people that actually die. And I know this is again an anthropocentric argument, but if we talk about the human suffering that happens as a result, makes factory farming completely prohibited in any capacity. And that's why we have floods, that's why we have disasters. And I'm hoping, I mean, I've applied, I want to do a PhD on food systems and disasters for this very topic. I've submitted it, and I hope people can pray for me. I'm gonna get a decision in the next 15 days. So that'll be awesome. But I mean, the argument has to be further extended to disasters as well now, because we're no longer the age of climate change, we're the age of disasters. And another term, that I don't like is the term natural disasters. I hope people understand that there is no such thing as natural disasters, because it's all human caused, it's all man-made. And when you put in that argument in Islam as well, it's just the most sensible thing to do is not to cause harm to humans, to the environment, and eventually animals as well. So it's a long argument, and you have to study a lot of things to make it. And I'm hoping I can learn more stuff. And after this video, I've actually done quite a few more podcasts on Islam as well. And that is something I'm continuously expanding in my country as well, because for some reason everybody is interested in Islam in Pakistan as well. So when I connect animals and Islam, people are willing to listen. I'm supposed to give a session in 2 months' time at the Federal Judicial Academy of my country, which is actually a huge honor, where I might get to, teach judges on my own on this topic, and eventually they later as well. So yeah, it's an easy argument, but you have to be very cautious of the words and the language you use because it's also very dangerous as well.
Yeah, and what you're talking about is very familiar to others in other religions, because it's they all tend to be anthropocentric, not all of them, but most of them. And so it's breaking through those barriers and those ideas. Um, I see we're getting close to the end, and I have other questions, but I'm wondering if people have questions because I want to make sure people have time to ask. So are you seeing some questions,
Ask the question to
Lisa?
yourself.
We do have, I'll field a couple of questions, but you may be able to ask your questions as well.
Okay.
I have a question from Louise Gray, who's sharing words matter. So instead of saying animals, should we use words like non-human beings or any other suggestions? Sometimes in the United States, people use the word animal as a derogatory comment. Also, saying animal sometimes creates separation, and our bodies are all in the animal kingdom. Just wondering if you have any suggestions on that.
I think it so and I'll take example from something else, and you know, people might be offended because they should be offended because you know, when we talk about this other word called disability and neurological issues and everything else, it's just context appropriate, and the term will depend on the region that you're working in. So in some areas, disability is wrong, and I would agree with them. I don't like the word as well. So you have to get, you know, very culturally appropriate with the region as to what works. And of course, maybe ask the person how they would like to be called, pronouns, that's why we have them. And I think we like basic decency to, you know, confirm what they are. So it's just again the empathy problem, but as we are all primates, we are all are part of the animal kingdom. I think if we call them non-human animals, I think that's better because it helps the humans make that link. Because we already know we are already, you know, on the right path, and we have to make it easy for other people. So maybe that's true for my part of the world. I would say that, you know, the person who lives in America or in South America or where any other place would know their context and community much better than I do. So they should use whatever is more culturally appropriate and more, you know, kind to the animal and or the human as well, or even the environment. So that's kind of what I would do, which I think already everybody knew because they're all empathetic people.
Well, it's always good to share a little bit more about what your thoughts are, because that's what people are curious about. So here's a question. In your experience, good first steps to do this kind of work in an environment, what are good steps to do this kind of work in an environment that may be hostile to veganism, especially in a religious one?
Yeah. So I think that's actually, you have to be very, very cautious because I think if firstly, word of caution, whatever religion you're advocating in, it's better that, you know, you're a member of that religion. If you're not, find someone. And I think that's the most easy first step because and we do that with a lot of other movements as well. We, you know, take the space when we should give it to them. And I think we do that with everything we do. We have to acknowledge it. And I think starting there, if we find someone from that community, I think they can better advocate for that. And I think that helps us become allies with them as well, because allyship and companionship and collaboration are the way to go forward. So in a religious setting, I would say find someone who understands these things, have a candid conversation. Because, you know, if they're talking about animals in their religion, I'm pretty sure they're open to discussing everything with you because they're waiting for someone to hear them. But because I mean, and then veganism, I think, might be a word that I would not start with. I would maybe, start with environmental friendly, plant-based, and something that's good for the human beings as well. So I'm very cautious of the environment that I work in, and almost always I start with, safe arguments, which are anthropocentric arguments, because that's what people want to listen. And so I just make it about themselves, and I think that gets me at least one step into the room, because uh I mean, when I'm manipulating them, but in a good way, of course, so you help you understand, because they need to see the connection. And then, of course, I think one barrier that we often face to hostility towards veganism is that argument has never been made in that community. So maybe the term itself is alien. And it is true for my nation. So whenever I mention veganism, people think I'm coming with a Western agenda, and I'm not lying. So you have to be careful, and so I'm making it plant-based. And as I mentioned before, I have a policy of not making the argument. If I'm talking about animals, I just tell people, let's not eat them, at least not at this point. That's my entire argument, and it works. So, so you have to, do whatever you can to make sure the animals don't suffer less, because in unfortunately in Pakistan, I am forced not to directly talk about veganism because it's just too new. I have to make other arguments, and I have to be cautious when I'm sitting with imams that I'm not talking about those things, because at this point they've not even fully acknowledged that maybe companion animals have protections in the religion, which they have. I'm actually working on some religious edicts to make sure that, these imams make a calling out that, for example, dog culling should be illegal, which is a case that I won, which was stuck in the courts for 8 years. And I don't know what did I do, but I just put in my hand in and it got fixed. I will not take credit for it, but did happen. And I mean, the case was waiting. But yeah, so that's how I would start, and to make help people make the connection with food. The best thing you can do is make sure the food is plant-based, and don't argue too much, because they are not in that state. Just, make innocuous arguments. They actually work. That's being clever, and that's what I do.
Thank you, Altamush. We really appreciate your suggestions. There's another question for you here, which is for those of us who are not lawyers, this is from Jillian, what can we do to take action in our communities to make systemic change?
I think lawyers are the most useless people in the world. They just make it all about themselves. Like, hey, you need a legal victory to do this. At the end of the day, it's just a piece of paper. And if people in the community don't believe in it, and the idea is there's no way in hell that you're ever going to get that implemented. But but I think being a lawyer is slightly important, because you need that legal victory, because it's just one step in the right direction. Because that's how you have protests, right? You say like this should be illegal, this should be banned and stuff. And given the structure of our society, we need them, unfortunately. So I'm glad I'm needed at least a little bit. So we start with that, legal argument, we win it. And eventually then it's in the people's court, which is the media and everything, and actually changing the way we think about animals, environment, or even human beings. And that takes a lot of time. That maybe take generations, but it's just, the step in the right direction. And I think in my movement work, I have, broken it down into 5 spaces, and I think we all have different roles. One of them is legal, one is grassroots work, which is working on the ground. It can be any project. One of them is education, and that has to happen at different sects, different audiences at different levels. And then it's media. You need that, because you are not going to win fights without media. So, and lastly, alternatives. So you have to help people. Like, if you make them acknowledge, okay, this is wrong, but what do I do now? So I think you need all 6 of those things. At least that's the level I'm at. And I'm still brainstorming, and I'm working with, a small community of animal rights activists who are trying to build this movement space where we're non-organizational. We're just people coming together. Um, because I think is I mean, we often put our ego on the table a lot of times. I do that as well, and I think that's human, that's okay. But maybe, create spaces where it's not about you, And that's a really hard thing to do. But that's very, very much needed, because one of the reasons why our movements fail is that we don't have any succession plans. And what happens after we are gone? Do we have people who are willing to take up that leadership role, or, make sure the movement moves on? So it's actually better if you create people who can take your work and just work with it, and you're just, lost in the words. I think that's progress. But people will not see it that way, and it takes a lot of courage to think like that. So I'm hoping I can learn more in the years, down the road, how to do that, or maybe a better idea. So lawyers, pretty useless. Become an academic, become a teacher, work on the grassroots. If you can work in policy, for that you don't need to be a lawyer. You just need, the scientific arguments and everything else. And lastly, for journalists or in media, I think you can create the highest amount of noise. So it depends. And there are probably other roles as well. So find something that works for you. I just love being a lawyer, so I'm happy. But there's so much you can do.
Wow, amazing. Such great feedback and answers. It's really wonderful. I really appreciate it. There's one more, maybe we have time for one more, and then we'll go to our closing. So this one was actually a question that Judy often asks, which is, do you have any advice on how to not get emotionally burnt out or in despair over being surrounded by non-vegans?
So I'm experimenting on this. I'm actually starting these novel mental health circles in my, city. And the goal actually is not just to work on trauma, but to help people connect together. Because I think trauma is very powerful, and it connects a lot of people together as well. It just can be a tool in the movement. So people understand that they're not alone. I think that's really important. And I think at some point, when take these leader positions of leadership, you have to unfortunately turn off that part of you that sees trauma and processes it that way. I am there, so I often try not to think about it, but I think it's a very powerful tool to connect people together, because not everybody is going to be at your level. And I think that's unfortunate, because they're just not seeing that amount of insane cruelty that vegans unfortunately have. Because I mean, at the end of the day, being vegan is a privilege, right? At least that's how I think about it, because we know some things that other people don't. And we connect empathy and compassion and everything else, and it's just a huge responsibility to make sure that other people get it as well. But the media, the corporates, the law, everything, the education, grassroots, it's all anti-veganism. So you have to break those things separately, and then, connect them together, because to build movements, you need to work on all of these issues together. So that's what I would do. And it works actually. But think of it as a privilege. I think it's a huge privilege. I don't know how I am vegan in Pakistan. Still don't know. But 4 years, I'm hoping to, stay on this. But yeah, I still don't know in Pakistan how the hell did that happen?
Well, it did happen, and it's a beautiful. We're so just honored to have you speak about this and to celebrate all of your victories. You've gotten so many in such a short time, and it's amazing to me that you're 29. To me, you've accomplished
Well,
more than most people have in 100 years. So we thank you very, very much, Altamush.
you
And
should thank the animals that they're responsible for all of this. I didn't do anything.
oh, well, very, very modest and very humble, I would say. And the animals are indeed grateful to you around the world, and as are we.
Yeah, and I love you have alluded to it several times that this is divine guidance going on here. And I think that, yeah, we definitely need that, all of us do, to give, to feel the confidence that we need to keep at this. But I absolutely love you saying veganism is a privilege. I think that's so beautiful, and
Yeah.
something we can all treasure, that So thank you for that.
Yes, and we're also very happy to share with our Interfaith Vegan Coalition that one of the things that Altamush was saying is that he worked really hard he has been doing the Charity Doings Foundation for many years. And just in the past year or so, the organization became vegan. And that's when this group became a member of our Interfaith Vegan Coalition. So we're very
Yeah, long journey, but we're there.
Yes, you're there and you're part of our coalition. And he also mentioned another group that's part of our coalition, Green Islam. And they're working together and collaborating. And we love to do this. We love to bring people together so that they can network and that they can do vegan advocacy, faith-based vegan advocacy together. Yeah. So don't know if you, Altamush, do you have any closing either statement or prayer or reading or anything you'd like to offer?
Okay, that's hard, but uh, I would say just, be proud of yourself wherever you are, regardless of the community that you live in or the religion that you belong to. I think at the end of the day, it's empathy and compassion and love that's going to transcend everything. And I think my next journey or my next project, what I'm seeing happening is doing veganism, animal rights work, human rights work, environmental rights work in an interfaith perspective, which is what you guys do, but I'm actually going to start doing it in Sri Lanka, Oman, Nepal. I've lined up something, and that just happened out of the blue as well. So all these things are not part of, our own particular identity or even one religion. So, I think the end goal of all of this is coming together. And that means that everybody will be different. We have to acknowledge that. Nobody is going to be as same as we are. Nobody's going to probably eat the same food as we are. But there will be some things that connect all of us. And I think that's love at the bottom of it. That's empathy and guidance and compassion, all the good words. But I think at the end of the day, without that, you cannot move these things because if you don't do it from the heart, you probably won't get the divine help, that this work really needs. Because if we think about it, veganism as a privilege, we could not have had it. We could have still, been those people who don't understand it, and I think that's not okay. But we could have. You can't do something about things you don't know. So be proud of, whatever you're doing, and be proud of the fact that you're working in this because you might have some neurological deficiency that some other person might have and they cannot do this. You might be in circumstances where, we don't have access to food. You might not have a roof over your head. You might not have children or, stuff and your loved ones, and things must have happened, and you're still pushing beyond things that people have no clue about. You're having probably gunfire inside your head. So, and still, you're there for other people, and that takes a lot of courage. So be proud of other people, actually, and understand that maybe they're going through stuff that you probably cannot even bear. So compassion there is really, really important for others. And build movements where you are no longer needed to lead them. That's the end goal. That's my goal. And yeah, there are awesome people out there. They will find you. If you think you are, lost, I think that's a good thing. You're trying to rediscover yourself. You should embrace your absolute weirdness. You are born to stand out. And this is a story worth telling. Make sure that it's awesome when it comes out. So yeah, I'll say that.
Oh, thank you so much, Altamush. Wow, we are so inspired by everything that you're doing. Please keep us posted. We want to hear all about your faith-based advocacy and your animal uh, advocacy via your legal wins. This is so exciting. It's an exciting time, and we want to hear more. So we will stay in touch with you. And I want to thank everybody for joining us. And We hope that you'll tune in to our interviews with leaders of the spiritual movement, the vegan spiritual movement, just like Altamush Saeed. And you're truly a leader. We appreciate you.
Thank you so
Likewise.
much, Altamush.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for
much.
coming. I know I'm certainly been blessed by this, and I hope you all have been too.
Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening or morning, wherever you are in the world. And we're very grateful to all of you, especially to Altamush. Thank you all. Have a
Yes.
wonderful.
Much love. Bye, everyone.